Hello and welcome to GeoNarratives. Today we are examining Turkey's political stance during the Gaza conflict, focusing on its emphasis on human rights, its criticism of Israel's actions, and how these policies have been represented in international media. The goal is not to exaggerate or inflame, but to understand the balance between moral language and diplomatic practice. Turkey and Israel have a long and complicated history. In the early 2000s, cooperation in defense and trade was common, but critical moments reshaped the relationship. In 2009, during the Davos summit, Prime Minister Erdoğan's one-minute intervention against President Peres marked a turning point. The Mavi Marmara incident in 2010, when 9 Turkish citizens were killed in international waters, deepened the rift. These events remain in Turkish public memory and shape the way leaders respond to every new crisis in Gaza. When violence escalated again, Turkey's response was clear: consistent emphasis on civilian suffering and repeated calls for restraint, humanitarian access, and respect for international humanitarian law. Turkish leaders spoke of protecting civilians, avoiding collective punishment, and upholding proportionality. At the same time, Ankara acted through diplomacy. Public condemnations, downgrading of diplomatic ties at certain points, mobilizing platforms like the United Nations and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and pressing for humanitarian corridors. The language sometimes included strong legal terms such as crimes against humanity or war crimes. These words carry moral force, but they also have strict legal definitions. Using them serves two purposes. It communicates outrage and it seeks to shape international attention. But effectiveness depends on evidence, independent verification, and whether other states and institutions respond. Beyond official statements, the conflict was also framed through intelligence rumors and media speculation. Reports of Mossad and MIT rivalry appeared in headlines, often in dramatic tones. While such claims are rarely verifiable, they highlight a broader truth. Conflicts extend into the shadows of intelligence and covert operations. The central question, however, is always whether such actions threaten civilians or bypass democratic oversight. Media coverage shows sharp contrasts. Western outlets often emphasize Israel's security concerns, hostages, and the threat of attacks inside its borders. Turkish and regional outlets highlighted the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and questioned proportionality and accountability. Neither narrative alone captures the full picture. A balanced understanding requires acknowledging both security concerns and the urgent need to protect civilians. Turkey's official policy attempted to maintain this dual perspective, condemning civilian attacks on all sides while insisting on accountability for Israel's disproportionate use of force. But how effective is this stance? Public condemnation and diplomatic pressure can shape narratives, raise costs in international institutions, and influence debates over arms transfers. Yet, changing conduct on the ground is far more difficult. That is why Turkey repeatedly called for concrete mechanisms, humanitarian corridors, independent investigations, neutral monitoring, and accountability under international law. Whether those calls translate into real outcomes depends largely on the willingness of the broader international community to act. At the same time, there are limits. Words do not always match deeds. Even in moments of tension, trade and strategic interests may continue. This creates skepticism, and rightly so. Democracies must hold their governments accountable for consistency, but acknowledging inconsistency should not erase the importance of the principles being defended. Protecting civilians remains an urgent priority, regardless of political calculations. Ultimately, Turkey's posture during the Gaza conflict can be understood as a combination of moral clarity and diplomatic pragmatism. Strong language on human rights, active engagement in multilateral forums, and repeated calls for legal accountability form the pillars of its approach. Whether this will succeed depends not only on Turkey, but also on how the international system responds to the challenge of upholding humanitarian law. Thank you for listening.